I was...
Yeah. Tell us about your job here in the forward torpedo room.
Yeah, but this was only, I started out right where you are. When I first was on there. I started out on that machine right behind you, and that was my first position on that machine, and I'd have to get up there and show you how I ran that machine. That machine right there, that machine is behind you is the one that put the angle on the torpedoes so that you knew which way it was going to go when it went out. And that ran the spindle that went right through right there. The spindle went right into the torpedo, and when you turned that wheel behind you there and automatically it turned, then it put the angle on the torpedo that you were firing. So my job was to be on that and make sure that those were matching, and they matched with the conning tower. And then if the power went out, then I've got a hand crank on each side of that, and then I would take that and I would crank it to match it, and when it matched, I pressed the button. That meant the conning tower would know that they could fire at any time, but they couldn't fire it unless I had that button pressed, which would mean that we had the right angle on the torpedo when it went out, so it would turn whichever way it's supposed to turn. Okay, wow. That was the first job I had.
Okay.
The second time, after I got promoted from there, from where you're sitting,
which is not a very nice place.
Then I was between the torpedo tubes here, and when we were starting to fire, we were getting them ready to fire, I had to handle all of these. This is the spindle that I had to make sure that the spindle was in the torpedo to put the angle on, so I had to operate these things and be sure that they were in on each torpedo as that guy out there is opening the outer door and getting it ready, that I would make sure that the spindle was engaged and ready to go. And these were the spindles here that went on each tube. See, then I would work these three, and I'm working with the guy behind that tube for this one, and this one, and this one, and then I'd be working with this guy over here so that he could do what he needed to do, open and close the outer door. And I'll show you later his other jobs that he was doing. While he's doing that, I'm working, making sure all this is all right. That's the second thing I job. And then I got promoted. Instead of getting promoted to be, we had one guy on this side that had these three tubes, and then we had another guy that was over here on this side, and he had these three tubes, and this is he had the wrench on here that we could open the outer door with this wrench here to open the outer door. Then when they loaded the torpedo, when he loaded the torpedo in there, then he would shut this door, and he put his crank on here, and then we'd have the inner door shut, the torpedo was in there, and of course we had all of these loaded with the torpedo all the time anyway. So that's already been done. So all I have to do then is fix it and throw off this lever here so that he can open the outer door. But we had to flood the tube, and so we used this manifold here.
That's what all those valves are for.
That's what all these valves are. Before we got the torpedo in there, and we had to flood. We had to flood the water in, and we had this valve here so we could flood the water in, so that the torpedo tube was full of water, as well as the torpedo in there. Okay. Well, we got all that. We did that beforehand. We had all these. We do those right away on all 6 of these tubes. And this guy would take care of these 3. And this guy would.
So
take care of these 3.
there's 1, 2, 3 tubes there, and then there's another matching set over here. So there's
same thing.
6 tubes in the bow of this torpedo.
Yeah.
I mean, of this submarine.
Yeah. So my job, this guy did these 3, and this guy did these 3. So it was when the torpedo was in there, close the inner door, and then this guy over here would handle these 3. And then my final job. So here we are. We've got one guy on that gizmo up there. We got another guy between the torpedoes handling the interlocking system so that these guys can open and shut the inner and outer door. He handles the locking system, which is all these levers there. And then when it came time to fire, then these guys come around, and this guy is running these 3 valves in order, this is the air valve on each street. When you get through firing, then you have to, this guy handled all this. I'll just put it simple. This guy handled these 3 valves, and this guy over here handles these 3 valves, and this, and so then this is another valve that goes with this one, with this tube, and then this guy over here handled these 3, and this guy over here handled these 3. And then after that, I had the other job that I had was to be in charge of this whole thing. The guy in between, the 2 guys in between, and the guy on.
So you were the chief?
And no, I was not a chief.
Not
I was
yet.
a first-class torpedoman.
First-class torpedoman.
And I was, yeah, and I was in charge of the whole operation. So then these 3 tubes, this guy here and that guy there, and that one and that one and there, and I had the phones on, and I was connected with the conning tower. So that's the way I operated it. When I had this job, I was the one that called the shots for all these guys. They automatically knew what to do. If we said make ready number 1 tube, then we would go ahead and do so. If we had the torpedo in, we'd have the water already in the tubes because we were making an attack. We were ready to do it. So we had to get that all done. We all worked together. But the fact is, if we going at the same times, like with this guy could be working on these 3 tubes and this guy working on these 3 tubes at the same time. And then when we got them all ready to fire, then we'd say, okay, we're ready to fire. So those are the different jobs I had. And then when they would say in the conning tower, they would say fire 1. Well, this guy in through here, I would get the message on the phone that say fire 1, and so then I would be in between the tubes, and there's a lever in here, and when they said fire 1, I'd hit that lever, and that would fire it by hand in case it didn't work automatically. Then this guy in between the tubes will actually fire it, see? But this guy is a busy man in between there, as well as these guys here, because these guys have to run these valves, which is a vent and a blow valve to regulate. If you want to flood it, you'd have to vent the tube and so forth. And then he took care of all of these valves on this side. He took care of the valves on that side. The guy.
Watch your step there.
Yeah, I'm the one here. I'm the one here that's in charge of the whole operation. So all I do here is on the phone is just step in and help this guy or help that guy if they were having trouble with what they were doing. And all the information came to me on the phones, and when everything was all ready, we'd say number 1 tube ready to fire, number 2 tube ready to fire, all tubes ready to fire, or whatever. We'd report that to the conning tower, and they would, when we're going to actually fire, they would say fire 1, and when they did that, this guy on number one tube here, he just hit that lever, and then it would fire from the conning tower automatically. It was hooked up to this, wired up to this section here, so that tube would fire. And then as soon as it fired, then this guy here will automatically, he has to immediately pull the lever down and vent the tube so that, and you also have, we got something else, I won't get too technical, but I'll wait. Yeah. So anyway, so this guy on this side would take care of these 3 tubes, and this guy take care of these 3 tubes, and the guy in charge right here communicates with and tells what's going on, and when we're ready, we say fire 1, we say fire 1, and they fire 1, and then they'll say fire 2, and we fire 2.
Great.
But
thank you very much.
We all work together.
That was really interesting.
All right.